Hey everyone, welcome to Sequence of Instructions. In this video we're going to be making a small web app that will roll a dice. I have some starter code here, so if you're interested in following along, I'll have a link to this code in the video description, so you can download it and follow along. Before we get into the JavaScript, which is going to be the focus of this video, let's run through what the starter code is really quick. It's pretty simple. You have this HTML page. We're going to load a style sheet. What is that? Okay, we're going to load this style sheet. A jQuery. jQuery is a helpful library that makes navigating the DOM easier. So we're going to load that, and then we're going to load our custom JavaScript file. Our JavaScript file we just saw has nothing in it, but the style sheet provided does have a few things, and namely, it basically sets up how the dice is going to appear. The dice div selected by ID dice. It's going to have a set width and height. It's going to position its background accordingly, but it's not going to have a background by default. It's going to get its background by what class we choose to give it. So if you give it the dice1 class, it'll take the side1 image. And dice2 gets the side2, dice3, side3, you kind of get it. Those images are included here in this image folder. Here's side3, for example. They're pretty boring and generic. I just found them online. Feel free to replace them with some fun dice sides of your own. Make it a little more customized. If we were to render this page as index.html page, it's going to look just like this. Basically nothing, just a button, and the button sadly doesn't do anything yet. It's a very lonely page. But hopefully by the end of this video we'll have something cool, and we will roll some dice with that button. So let's get into it. Here's our JavaScript file. It is empty. I find it helpful to break large problems down into much more smaller ones. This way you can kind of think of them as, not to pun on the name of the channel, but a sequence of instructions that are each atomic and each gives just one single instruction to the computer, and that way you kind of build this solution like Legos. Okay, so when it comes to rolling a dice and displaying it on the screen, there's three large steps that I think about. The first one is going to be generating a random number. Spell the word properly. Generating a random number. That's basically going to add the mystery element to this, because if it was a predictable number each time, it wouldn't be very exciting. This app would be kind of boring, and it wouldn't be very useful. But if it's random, now you actually have a proper virtualization of rolling a dice. So we want to generate a random number. Once we have that random number, our next step is going to be to associate that number with a dice image. And this, I'm being a little abstract here, but basically we're going to be associating the random number that we generate to a class name so that we can display that image on the page. Alright? And the last step is going to be doing those first two repeatedly every time you click the button. So step 3 is going to be binding the dice rolling action to a button click. And this way, we don't have to keep reloading the page to do things. We can just click this button, and each time you click it, it'll be as if we rolled the dice. All right, so these are our 3 steps from a high level. Kind of breaks the solution down into much more manageable chunks. So let's get into it. All right, so step 1, generating a random number. I'm going to make a function to do this, and I'm just going to call it get random number. All right, and there's a few ways you can go about this. The random number we want in particular, I'm going to leave a comment in my function, which is going to say this function will return a number between 1 and 6. And to be extra clear, it's going to be 1 and 6 inclusive. So there's a few ways you can do this. It's not a large range, so if you're clever with arrays or something, you can maybe make it work. I'm going to use 2 functions. One of them is going to be math.random. So let's store this into a number. Random number equals math.random. And you can look up math.random, look up what it does if you're not familiar, but I'll just tell you. It's going to give us a random number between 0 and 1 where 1 is excluded. So I'm just commenting it here. It returns a number between 0 and 1. And this notation means the range is 0 and 1. This bracket means 0 is included and 1 is excluded, which means if you ran this enough times, if you generate a random number enough times, you might get 0, but you would never get 1. And this is important because of what we're going to do next. Okay, so here's our 0 to 1, but we don't want our range from 0 to 1. We said we want it from 1 to 6. So what we're going to do here is we're just going to times it by 6, and that's going to extend our range from, so let's think about the edges of this range. If it was 0 before, it's going to, 0 times 6 is still going to be 0, so our range is still going to start at 0. But let's say it was 0.9999999 before, and now we times it by 6, it would be, 5.999, whatever it is. So this is actually going to make our range 0 to 6 excluded. And this is why it was important before that 1 would never actually hit. 6 is never actually going to hit. You're never actually going to get a 1, and so you're going to get things exclusively less than 1, and therefore timesing it by 6, your range is going to be exclusively less than 6. Alright, so this is our random number, but we don't want decimals. So if we were to log this right now, let me log this so we can see. I'm going to come over here to our page and refresh it. And now this get random number is going to be visible. This function, I can run it. You'll see we're getting these decimals. So there's a 5.0, a 3.1, a 2.9, 5.1, 4.2. It repeats, it'll go on forever. Spell clear properly, thank you. Excuse me. So we're getting decimals here, and we actually want whole numbers. So there's another function we can use. It's going to be math.floor. So we're going to store this into a different variable. We'll call this rounded down. We're going to floor our random number. So math.floor, the ceiling is above you, the floor is below you. Math.floor is going to always round the number down. If it's 2.1, it's going to become 2. If it's 2.9999999, it's still going to become 2. It's always going to round down. So now if we log this, let's see what kind of numbers we're getting here. So let's reload and get random number. We get a 1. That's great. We get a 5. We get a 4. We get a 5. These are all good. Are there any problems with this? Let's do it a few times. Oh, so there it is. So we get a 0. We never have a side dice 0. And we're also never going to get a 6, because remember, this is 0 to 6 excluding 6. So our range right now, rounded down, our range is 0 to 5 included. Alright, so we've converted our range from 0 to 6 decimals, where 6 is excluded, to whole numbers, 0 to 5, where 5 is included. But we want our numbers 1 and 6 included. This is what we want our function to do. So we're going to do one last manipulation on it. When we return this, we're going to return rounded down plus 1. And this is going to shift our range from 0 to 5 to 1 to 6. So if it was a 0 before, 0 plus 1 becomes a 1. If it was a 3 before, 3 plus 1 becomes a 4. If it was a 5 before, the highest point of our range, 5 is going to be converted into a 6, and that is going to be the highest point of the range of the return range we want. So now if we did this, we logged the output of this each time, we would always see 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, or 6 as whole numbers. And that means we finished our step 1. Alright, step 2 is going to be associating this number with a dice image. So maybe I have a function here called get dice class, and it's going to take a number. Alright, and the number it's going to take is, so this function is going to, the number it's going to take is 1 to 6, the output of this get random number, and it's going to return the class name associated with the side of dice. This is a mouthful, represented by number. So if you give it a 2, it's going to give you the class name that will display the 2 side of the dice. Does that make sense? So this is actually going to be a really simple function. But the reason we want to put it in a function is maybe in the future we have many-sided dice and the names don't necessarily correlate like this, and this action of associating a number to an actual dice class might be more complicated. So in preparation for that, we're going to put it into a function so we only have to change it in one spot if ever we need to change it. Alright, so let's say our number is 1. What do we want it to come out with? Dice underscore 1. If our number is 2, we want it to be dice underscore 2. So this is actually really easy. It's going to return, spelled properly, dice underscore, and we're going to concatenate the number. So we're going to do a video on type coercion. If you haven't viewed it, or if you haven't seen it, you don't know what type coercion is, I encourage you to check it out. But basically, it's going to convert this number into a string and glue it onto the end of here. So this is concatenating this string. It's going to convert coerce number into a string and concatenate it with this string. So again, if our number was 3, it'll be dice underscore 3 will be the result. And that is our second step. Perfect. Now the last step is binding the dice rolling action to a button click. Alright, so this is going to look a little boilerplate, but basically this tells jQuery to wait until the page is totally loaded. Wait until the page is ready, and then do some stuff. Because we're going to be selecting elements from the page. If the page isn't ready when this starts running, that element might not exist yet. So we're going to say wait for the page to be ready, wait for the document to be fully loaded, and now we're going to select some elements here. So the first element we want is our button. Because these are going to be jQuery objects, I like to have the variable start with a $sign. You don't need to do that, but that's my convention. So here we're going to select the element with the ID roll dice and store it into our button. You'll see here the ID roll dice is indeed our button. And then we're going to do the same for the dice container, where we select by ID. This time the ID is dice. So now we have references to those two elements. Now we're going to do our click handler. So we're going to say when you click the button, so button.click, every time the button is clicked, it's going to run this function. We're defining a function right here, and every time the button's clicked, that function is going to execute. And what do we want that function to do? Well, first we want to get a random number. So we can get our number. Okay. And we're going to get a class from that number. We can't call it class. Var dice class equals get dice class from number. All right, so we get a random number. Go, great, we got a random number. What class should we show using this number? Our get dice class is going to tell us that. So now we have this dice class. And the last step is going to be putting it on our dice container. And we do that with this function add class. This is, again, is a jQuery function. And this is going to say whatever string you give me, I'm going to make that the class. So if this were to run, let's say with dice 2, it selected a 2, it got in here, it found dice 2 as the class, it's going to add the class dice 2. It'll be as if your code looked like this from the start. And let's say it changes to 3, it's going to make it, or 4, it's going to be dice 4. There is one last caveat, and that is if we do this multiple times, it's going to keep adding these dice classes. It's going to go dice 1, maybe you roll a 3, dice 3. So your classes are going to start to look like this. So it's just going to keep adding them. And that's not going to be good. We really only want it to have one of these dice classes at a time. So what we're going to do instead, before we add the class, we're going to remove class. And you could pass a string here to say like remove this class specifically, but we don't know, and we also don't care what class was on it before. All we know is whatever class it was, we want to get rid of it. So if you call this without any parameter, it will remove all classes. So basically, before each roll, or after you click, before it actually displays the class, it'll always delete whatever the class was. It'll always go back to this starter state. Alright, and I think that is going to be sufficient. So let's try it out. Hopefully it is. Alright, so if I roll this dice, there it is. And every time I click it, it's going to generate a random. Sometimes it does roll the exact same one, and that's realistic. In a real dice, you might roll the same number a few times. But here it looks like we've hit every number already. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. And I can keep doing this forever. So that's the video. That was pretty fun. I challenge you all, if you were following along, maybe add another dice. See if you can get 2 dice to roll. Maybe have them roll with their own button each, or maybe click a button once and have them each roll as if you were playing, Yahtzee or something. There's many different ways you can extend this, stylize it however you want, really make it your own. And if you have it, a link to it, you can host it somewhere, you'll never be without dice. Wherever you go, have it on your phone, you'll always have a pair of dice. I think that's pretty cool. Anyway, thanks for following along. I'm going to post the solution code in addition to the starter code onto the repository. Check out the link in the video description to find it. And let me know your thoughts. Let me know different ways you maybe generated your random side or other ways you've extended this project. I look forward to hearing from you all. Have a great day.